This is the Powerful Nonsense Podcast. Learn everything you need to know to make a living outside the 9-to-5 grind and crush it at life. You'll learn from inspirational guests and in-depth discussions. Go from employee to entrepreneur and start creating a life you love and still pay the bills. So here are your hosts, Wayne Ingram and Cem Yildiz. Let's get on with the show! This podcast is sponsored by the University of Northampton, the first UK university to be awarded the Ashoka U Changemaker Campus status in recognition for their commitment to social entrepreneurship.
We're back.
We are, with not just Powerful Nonsense goodness, but Suli Breaks goodness.
Round 2.
Round 2. Yeah, if you haven't listened to part 1 of our Suli Breaks interview, I'd highly recommend going back and listening to that first. So hit pause, go to the podcast app or iTunes or wherever you're listening to it, find episode 1, part 1, and then come back. You have our permission. In the meantime, for those newcomers who have never listened to us before, because there are loads of you out there, introductions are in order. So I am Wayne Ingram.
And I am Cem Yildiz.
And we are the Powerful Nonsense Podcast
Crew.
So if you don't know who Suli Breaks is, he is a spoken word artist, YouTube sensation, and now Powerful Nonsense guest.
Well, hey.
Also, we'd like to say thank you to everyone who's entered our Suli Breaks book bundle competition so far. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Yes, and the more you share, the more entrances you get as well.
Exactly. So if you have entered, share it with people, because you're going to be more likely to win. How cool is that? So if you haven't entered yet, head on over to powerfulnonsense.com/book, check out all the books, and enter.
In this episode as well, Sully will kind of break down the reasons why these books have changed his life. I know he's done a couple of YouTube series where he's shared books that he's enjoyed. So again, he kind of goes in a bit deeper of why these books mean so much to him.
Mm-hmm. So check that out at the end of the interview. But in the meantime, let's give you much more Suli Breaks goodness, golden nugget, knowledge bomb stuff and throw it your way with part 2 of the Suli Breaks interview.
Obviously, starting out, like, it was quite interesting that you actually mentioned about the whole YouTube SEO and stuff like that, and your friend was talking about that, because obviously you're at Niketown at this point, and was you kind of looking for, because everyone would initially say that the videos that probably most people know about you, obviously you're quite controversial. Obviously, when you look deeper, you can see what you're trying to say, but on the top level, they're controversial. Was that kind of like planned into it so that you knew it would go viral, and were you kind of like doing your research and thinking, okay, I know there's young people on this platform. If I start saying that school shit, which everyone can relate to, but also put a message out there, was it that tactical?
It wasn't as deliberate as that, and that's one thing that I've tried to get back to this year. I think from the creative standpoint, it wasn't as deliberate as that. From a positioning standpoint, as to like how like. Because I made lots of videos. I used to make lots of videos about different things that people could relate to, but always from a point where I could kind of find the subject. So when I kid you not, like when I did Why I Hate School But Love Education, it was based off another video by a guy called Jefferson Bethke, who did a video called Why I Hate Religion But Love Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So from a standpoint, I didn't even think people around the world would resonate on the school subject. I just thought like, what are two concepts that I struggle with, and from a creative standpoint that I really enjoy? So I knew that he'd had success by using his that kind of creative stance. But it wasn't like, I really didn't think school was going to be the turning point to make everything big. And at the time, like having 1 million views was like something that I wanted to do, but it was kind of like unfathomable. So when I was writing, I was more writing for my peer groups and people who I could relate to, you know. As the years went, maybe like in the last 2 years, I was writing a bit more broad, which I didn't like as much. But I felt like I was writing more for my immediate peers, and that's what we could all relate to. Everybody in Niketown at that time had graduated, and everybody was working Niketown. And I was like, what am I going to write that when I come into the store tomorrow, everyone's going to be like, oh, that was sick, you know, or I relate to that. So I didn't know that. So the positioning was very deliberate in terms of like the titling and where it was going to sit on YouTube, how the video was going to look. But but the one that took off was actually the second time I did the video, because the first time I did it, it was very different in the nature. Like I had a different visual style to it. So when I did that, it was kind of like, from a creative standpoint, it was just like what's dope, like what people relate to, what's gonna make people in work be like, oh, this is cool, this is fucked up, let's all relate, but the positioning and the angle in which I put it on YouTube was definitely very, very conscious and deliberate.
And obviously, you got in a little bit of trouble at that time, didn't you?
Yeah, and that's when I was at my most controversial stage. That's when it was like
the height of controversy.
Yeah, chasing the virality. When you have nothing to lose. So I was like, yo, like imagine if I made a video about like this trainer that we had I still have the video, and I'm waiting to re-upload it at some point. It's on my channel. I just put it on private because
is this the only video that you've taken off your channel then?
It's still on the channel. It's on private. I'm pretty sure it's still on there. It's on private.
Oh, okay.
But it's when we were going through the disciplinary stuff, like when I was getting fired, I had to take it down because I was really trying to get my job back. I didn't want to lose my job. So I had to put it on private.
Could you just go into that story? Because obviously I know it because I went to your show, but could you just break that down with like what actually happened?
So basically, I was releasing videos every 2 weeks, and it was like, I had an audience, I had an immediate audience because everyone at Nike Town's young and everyone's kind of like come from the same place, we're all like, everyone's so like, and everyone's creative. So I was doing these poems about relationships, doing poems about like religion and like money and all this kind of stuff. And then it was like, we was in a store one day and Nike, everyone's like, oh, check out this trainer. So Nike's released this trainer and the trainer is a Converse, but it's dirty. So you buy the trainer dirty. So you don't have to scuff them up and make them dirty. You buy them dirty, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've seen
it. Doesn't make any. Yeah. So I was like, what the hell? Like, this is ridiculous. And it was a big talking point at the store. Everyone was like, this is stupid. Everyone was talking about it. So I was like, oh shit, this is a subject.
Is that bad to blow up?
So I was like, this could have blown up worldwide. Like, this is crazy. Nike's a big company. I can attack them, get some views, get some traction. So I went online and was like, look at this ridiculous trainer Nike's made, blah, 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 etc., etc. I should have kind of thought it through since most of my audience is at the store and people at the store were going to see it. But ironically, it wasn't until 6 months, about 4 months later that I got pulled up on it. So,
so you got credit with your peers first and then after.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone was like, oh my God, how can you do that? That's, I was like, it felt like being in school. Everyone was like, oh man, that's crazy. You're going to get fired. And I was like, nah, I won't get fired. Don't worry about
Suli.
that.
He's so crazy.
Yeah, I had that rep, I was like, yeah. And it was like, it was always more important for me, even so now, to do something that is genuine and that people really care about rather than do something that is like, it's popular. So that's what it was. I wanted to do something that was like, this is what we were talking about. This is true. I don't care what Nike are going to say to me. Like I don't care what company they're. I'm going to say this and I'm going to put it out there. So yeah, that happened. And then, about 3 months later, I get called into the office and they pull out the computer and they're like, oh, look, we've seen this video. And I was like, oh shit.
Like, no, I haven't seen anything. No.
Legally, I studied law and legally I had more of a stance, but it's just that when you're a sales assistant in a company like that, they'll be like, you're fired. If you want to take it to court, fair enough. But legally, we argued for about 3 hours. Like I did my research, I brought up the legal stuff, and they couldn't say anything. At the end, they just had to say, oh, you're fired.
Mm-hmm.
And the lawyer wouldn't take my case as well because I guess it wouldn't make sense to anyone. He was like, you work for the company, why would you do that? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I just, yeah.
I want views.
But legally, I had a very good stance because I operate as an independent entity online. It's a different spectrum,
Yeah, you weren't behaving as a representative of Nike online.
Yeah, I wasn't. I didn't have my uniform on. There's cases where people have had their uniform on, so which makes their case weak because it means that you actually acting in the capacity of an employee. But I wasn't. Mm-hmm. That means I'd be liable for everything I said on stage.
It's quite It's quite interesting because I know myself as well when I was going through this phase where I started like reading all these books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, 4-Hour Work Week. You kind of get into this mentality initially. I think you kind of work through it, but first of all, it's kind of like this fuck the world attitude, like you've been lying to me for so long. And it's kind of funny because I don't know if you've listened to Skepta's got this video where he's just sitting on the couch, Underdog Psychosis.
Yeah.
And he kind of mentions...
I ain't seen it now. I know what you're talking about, but I ain't seen it now.
Yeah, watch it. It's like a 10-minute talk where Skepta just sits down, he kind of breaks down his mentality, is the same sort of thing, and he says that, like, you get stuck in this sort of, initially anyway, this kind of fuck the world attitude, which I think a lot of people go through when you kind of figure out that things are a bit different. I think that's probably what you what probably happened when you put your video out, suddenly people see a different perspective, and then there's a lot of anger that, wait a minute, why didn't anybody tell me this?
Because you feel like a mug. You feel like I spent my whole life doing something like this when I didn't have to, you know. And then you feel like you feel betrayed because you feel like you wasted so much time, you know. And I guess that's what it was. I was like, no one can tell me nothing, you know. And this is it. We're going for it, you know. And I guess, and I always said to myself, like, even if I got fired, I want to, like I said, I want to put 100% into what I'm doing. If I thought this was a good subject or something relevant, I don't care what implications it was going to have outside of the realm of what I'm doing. It had to be done. And
then obviously you get fired, and what happens next?
Yo, it was just like a movie, man. It was so much like a movie. Like, Why I Hate School But Love Education, the video we shot, we had to shoot that twice, you know. And then, I mean, I got sent home, and I'm like, oh, like, to be honest, I should have made a video. I was actually gonna record a video. I think I did record the video. And I may have it. Yeah, I did record a video as to why I got fired and etc. So that was going to be my next upload. But when you get fired, the reality is you are a bit disheartened because you ain't got no income in it. Like, regardless of how tough you want to be, I was a bit kind of annoyed. So that was the video. That was the only.
Yeah, the point where you want to go, stick your job. I don't need your job, but then deep down you're going, I really do need this job.
Exactly, and that's what it was, isn't it? Like, deep down it was like I was sitting there like, So it was kind of like, but it was just so mad because then. So they before they fire you, they put you on suspension. So when I went on suspension, I was like, I have this video, and I was like, oh, so let me upload it, innit? Because I didn't have content. I don't think I was writing anything creative outside of the video where I was gonna say why I got fired. So I decided to upload that video, and I had it sitting around for a while. So literally, when I uploaded it, it just started to pick up. It was just so crazy. It just started to take off. I mean, it's weird because when I wrote Why I Hate School But Love Education, like I said, that's not the first time I'd released it. I had a previous video, which was like cutaways and like little scenes that were depicting what I was saying. And when I made that video, I made it January on that year, the day before my birthday. I was with my friend making it. We made a video, and we were like, this is going to hit 1 million views. We were shouting and screaming. So I've still got these videos of us saying this is going to hit 1 million views. So when we uploaded that initial version, and it only got like maybe 20,000 views. I had to remove it because it kept on clashing with the current version.
Mm-hmm.
But when it was like so it was so crazy because it's kind of like we preempted a year earlier that content was going to hit 1 million views. But it was just weird. So when I uploaded it and it just started picking up, Then I went in for my second meeting about what's it called? About why? Okay, they're going to fire me now. So I was doing the research and I'd seen the lawyer. And they're going to fire me. And the video was just picking up. By the time when I went into the meeting, the video had like, it was almost like 1 million views. By the end of the week, it was like 2.5 million views. Like, it just kept on growing.
I could just imagine your smile on your face getting bigger and bigger, like as you're about to get your notice.
I wanted to show the managers, like, this is what I'm on. I don't need you guys anymore, innit? You know what I mean? But it was so weird because I do remember sitting in the canteen. And this guy came up to me and said, oh, you're getting fired. And he's like, what are you going to do now? And I was like to him, oh, you know, I do the videos, innit? Like, check it out. So I gave him, and he was like, oh, whoa, 250,000 views. Wow, like, you're really doing your thing. So that's why that moment really sticks out in my head. So that literally just blew up. But people don't understand that even though that video is my most successful, like in terms of views-wise, that video did not build Suli Breaks the brand, or that didn't make me into, like, it opened the door, but it didn't make me, like, I didn't get any opportunities of that video. That just gave me like a bit of cash from YouTube, and people like, oh, that kid's video is cool. It's like people hadn't gravitated, because videos go viral every week on YouTube, you know what I mean? So one video never really solidifies it for you. So I was really at a crossroads, to be honest, because I had this video, I had this lump sum of maybe like $2,000, and I was like, okay, I have to make this last me because I'm not getting any opportunities, or I'm not doing anything. And so I had a decision, and my girl at the time was like, you need to get another job, you know, because you're not really making any money. Like, you're not getting all these bookings and all that stuff, even though you have a video with 5 million views. So I was at another crossroads where it was kind of like, okay, do I take this 150% of the way and see where it leads me? Because now this is like the universe, or whatever you believe in, telling me that, listen, this is your opportunity, take it. So I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to grind away with this money that I have and not get another job. So then I grinded away, and then it's when I did, so that came out in December. I think I will not let an exam. I did American Dream, then I did that, and that started getting a bit of traction, but that still wasn't it. And it's when I did I Will Not Let an Exam Result Decide My Fate, and I think that was in April, May, and that's when the rest was like kind of history. Where it was like, yeah, like I've established, the business is viable now. You know, it looks like I'm actually gonna go somewhere with this.
It's quite funny because I've been reading a lot of like Wayne Dyer, and he obviously talks a lot about synchronicity, and it kind of like the fact that obviously you were losing your job, and so it's kind of like, okay, this is the time where I have to go all in, and then suddenly, sometimes obviously it could be a bit woo woo, or the universe putting everything in your path to actually say, okay, it's time now. And obviously, most people are kind of like waiting for that moment or trying to time when that moment happens, but often you can't even plan it.
You can't plan it. You can't. It happens weird, and I just feel like that's why the only thing you can really focus on is just doing what makes you feel alive. Like if you can focus on that, like even when it comes to making like art and creativity, just focusing on what makes you feel alive. Yeah, everything else will kind of cater around that, because you can't plan these moments. Like you really, really can't plan these moments. Like every kind of success I've had, it's never been the one that I've expected it to happen. You know, it's always come from the moments. And so a lot of the emphasis in the past year, since you guys see me at the show and stuff, is kind of like just making sure that I'm making stuff that I believe in and that it's like I'm proud of, and everything else will just fall into place outside of that. That's my priority. Like obviously I'm being deliberate about moves that I make and stuff, but my main incentive is like, yo, just be passionate about it again, you know, be passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, and this is kind of going to be similar to a question that I asked earlier, but if you hadn't have lost that job, do you think you'd be where you are now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That one I think so, yeah.
Why do you think that?
Because I had a very deliberate place where I wanted to see myself. Like what my wife gave me, which was kind of like irreplaceable. She gave me focus, but once I had that focus, it was kind of like I know where I need to be. So even with jobs, I was like, if I'm in, because I was always very deliberate about picking jobs which I'm not too invested in. So Nike Town is just stacking shelves. When I go home at the end of the day, I don't need to think about it. I don't have reports to write for Monday and all that kind of stuff. So I always said to myself, any job that I took in that capacity, I never wanted to be there for longer than a year, 2 years max. I was always going to leave anyway.
It's funny because a lot of people like leave university and then they say, I'm just going to do this job for now. Mm-hmm. And I think you did. I think you did a video about this actually, and you were kind of. I think you were breaking down year by year on what it'll be like, what you'll keep saying.
Oh yeah, the part-time
really good video.
Yeah.
What was that one called?
Part-time Hustlers.
That's the one, and it was kind of breaking that mentality down, because I think a lot of people initially say, yeah, I'm just going to do this for now, and we know we were on the creative campus at our university, and the amount of people who are no longer doing their creative endeavor because they say, look, I'm just going to get the office job for now, and it kind of like sucks you in suddenly.
Yeah, the office job is not easy, man, and that's why I knew that if I went down that path, I was like, I'd rather sacrifice dignity and a bit of money and do something menial, because the office job, like working, like when you work a job that you have to commit to, is not as easy just to, like my wife's left her job now maybe like 4 months ago, but it's not easy just to dump everything and be like, I'm done with it, you know?
I know when I left my training, one of the key things which I was adamant on was that I was not going to get sucked into the 9 till 5 life, and I think that was so intentional on my part, and I think that's kind of why I've managed to avoid the sort of the career that I've fallen into. And I think it's so important, I think, for people to recognise that just because everybody else has followed that path doesn't mean that that's the path to get you where you want to be.
That's exactly it, bro. That's like the magic words of this generation, you know? Like, there's so many different ways to skin the cat nowadays. And I think people, like, everybody feels like you have to do it a certain way. And I can imagine people get frustrated when they find out, oh shit, this guy didn't do it that way. And people get angry and they're like, it's not fair. But I feel like people need to know that everyone has the opportunity, you know? You don't have to do it the same way. And you know, there's no limitations. You can be 50 years old, or you can be like 16 years old, you know, there's no limitations as to how you can do something now. You can't just follow that one strict route. The world doesn't even progress like that.
It's funny though, because obviously the opportunity is so available. We can see it nowadays on social media, but still people kind of, even in the entrepreneurial world, they want the blueprint, where there isn't very clear. It's just to know that the opportunity is there and no one can tell you how to do it your way. You're just going to have to go with it and, like you say, commit fully to it.
that's exactly it. You know, I stopped reading a lot of entrepreneurial books as well for a while. But, I don't read them as heavily as I used to. Not as much. I read more like I go back to reading a lot more of my fantasy and all these random books I like. But I balance it out now because, like you said as well, in the entrepreneurial world, you can also get caught up in the idea that there's a blueprint. You know, and I'm like, you know, I'm a creative, and I feel like the environment will dictate the path, but you can't get. There is no blueprint to anything. You know, you always hear about the unicorns, like the Facebooks and the Snapchats, who are the ones that really change the culture, the ones who like disprove the blueprint, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So actually, one of the people that listens to this show on the regs, Jem asked kind of like, what question would you ask Suli Breaks? And the question that came up was about making money with your art, and where is the line between creating art and quote unquote selling out?
You know, I feel like the line is very blurred because I can openly say that I've sold out at times. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say maybe it's stuff you've never heard, but I can openly say that I've sold out at times. But at the time, I convinced myself that, I really wanted to do this, etc. You know, but I think selling out never comes from a monetary perspective. I feel like it never comes from the fact that it's like, they're offering me this much money to do this. Wait, sorry, I'm just trying to I'm trying to phrase this carefully because I think. Yeah, because I mean, as an artist, I feel like you have to be a business, and it's very important to balance the both dynamics. But I think for me, selling out came out at the point when I was looking at stuff I was doing, and I'm like, I'm not happy with this, you know. And I think that's when the point when it's not so much compromising your values. I mean, I don't compromise my values, and so that's why I thought, I'd never sell out. Like, you know, I don't drink. So when came to me, when a company came to me,
we can bleep that if we need to.
Yeah, if you could, probably, yeah. So when the company came to me and they were like, "Oh, can you do this?" I'm like, "No, I can't do that because like I don't drink, you know." So, but I didn't compromise any of my values. But I think the thin line does come when it's like you're doing stuff you're not proud of, but you're not doing it so much for money. That's confusion. Sometimes you're doing it for attention, or you're doing it for publicity. And I think that's the point where selling out does come into it. I feel like a lot of people feel like just because they're growing, whatever's making them grow is what they should carry on doing. And I don't think that's the right way. I see it with a lot of YouTubers who was just like, let's say the most controversial thing in a title that's going to get people to watch the views. You know what I mean? And then at what point does it become about saying controversial titles and making quality content? And I think that's where the most important that's where you can sell out. For someone who, I mean, the obvious example of selling out is when you have your principle, then you have values, and you go against them because the sum is sufficient. But I think the one which people often look is kind of like selling out to be more popular or selling out to be more famous, to create content that you don't really want to create.
Yeah, it's when the art that you're creating changes to match up with getting results. I think that is the point at which.
You said it better than me. Yeah, that's exactly it. You said it better than me. I'm going to remember that because that's how I want to phrase it. When the art changes and the incentive is getting results, you know, Macklemore has a very good like intro for his album that he released recently, and it's called The Unruly Mess That I've Made. And he's talking about like how after the success of Thrift Shop, he's just talking for about 5 minutes, and he says the goal was kind of like they were trying to figure out how do we make the next hit? How do we make, you know, let's not mess it up. And I feel like that's another dynamic of selling out, like you said, where you're like, how do I get the next result? And then you completely compromise everything that you've been trying to create from the start.
Okay, ladies and gents, we're just going to take a wee quick break.
Make it snappy.
Make it snappy. We need to thank our sponsor, which is the University of Northampton.
Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. They've been supporting us for quite a while now, and they really are, in terms of if you're looking for like ideas for entrepreneurial skills, setting up your business and doing it with social conscience, these guys are the guys to check out. They're a great university. We are alumni ourselves
Yep.
So we can vouch for this. They are absolutely supportive of anybody who wants to set up their own venture. So if you want to check them out, if you're thinking, I'm going to get a degree, but I also want to set up my own business, check them out, northampton.ac.uk. Also, we have another giveaway for you, not just our Suli Breaks bundle, but we have put together a free ebook for you.
We just keep giving.
You just come to Powerful Nonsense. We just keep, the giving never stops. So we know that there's a big challenge for entrepreneurs, sidepreneurs, wantrepreneurs out there getting their business off the ground and getting their side hustle off the ground when they're also trying to work the 9 to 5 and pay the bills. But we have a solution. Our ebook, Find the Time for Your Side Hustle. I think that was it. I can't remember the title. Oh my God. Finding Time for Your Side Hustle.
It's not like you wrote it, Wayne.
I know. How bad is that? Finding Time for Your Side Hustle. And it's all about finding the time around your day job and your other commitments. Loads of value in there. Stuff that I use myself. Jem uses, I believe, a lot of it.
Never. Don't read your books.
Yeah, it's fine. No offense taken. It's fine. So yeah, head over there. You can get it on the homepage at powerfulnonsense.com. Click on the big button, enter your email address, and we'll ping it across to you. Great.
Back to the show. What I wanted to know, obviously, you said there that as soon as you saw that you made some money, your videos went viral. I would just love to know, like, what you said that you had to start treating it like a business. And I think a lot of people, obviously, they get to the phase where they're creating their art, and then it's kind of like people kind of put off the whole needing to think about it as a business. Like, even when we made our podcast, we were like, okay, we enjoyed doing this, but how do we make it viable? Like, what was the kind of business questions? Because I haven't seen much about, obviously you talk a lot about creative in art, but I'd love to get your take on how to kind of see your art as a business and what was going through your head, what questions, what opportunities were you looking for to say, okay, I do poetry, how can I live off this?
I guess it was more about assessing and understanding your revenue streams. And it was more like, for me, it was the basis of creating like the passive income stream. So I was like, okay, I'm making videos. Where do I get the most of money from making videos? Oh, you get money from YouTube revenue. And then you think about it and I'm like, but that's not that much money. So then you start to discover and you get approached by people. So you get approached by YouTube networks and you start to assess and you talk to them and they say, and you ask them, how do you monetize the video content? And they'll be like, oh, we have the CPMs, we can increase the CPM and we can partner you with brands. And then the next aspect was like, okay, you know, a lot of people like my ideas and my thoughts and I enjoy speaking. Is there an avenue via that? And then you start finding out about speakers bureaus, you know, because I've never had a manager, you know, so it's like I've dabbled with a few people here and there, but I've always had to be very proactive about how I've approached stuff. And even so to a point where I feel like my business could be bigger, but I like the way it's growing organically. But it was like, oh, merchandise is something I dabbled in, which I really hate, and I realized I don't really like that part of it. But it was all the different revenue streams and really assessing them. It wasn't just like, okay, I've created a video, I've got 1 million views. Okay, cool, let me keep on creating videos. It was kind of like, if there's this many people watching it, there must be some value in there. How do I access those value streams? You know, how do I access those values? Or even if there's not 1 million people watching it, people like my content. What about it is the value that can be sold or can be increased in a monetary aspect? You know, there are people like my content. It may only be one person watching it, but they may be like, they may own a company. So a company, I could be like, oh, I could create a video for you, and then there's revenue within that aspect. You know.
And
so yes, the revenue really has. Sorry, go on.
No, carry on.
Oh yeah, so it was really an assessment of like, oh shit, like how do I supplement my salary? And it was like more than just getting like YouTube revenue. And then it was kind of like, I saw that people were downloading the poems to listen to, and I was like, oh, maybe if I put them on TuneCore, like people like them. And then surprisingly, people started buying them as well. And if I hadn't assessed that, it would have just been something that I'd let go, because I was like, I don't buy poems. Why would people buy poems? You know. So it was all that. Just take a step back and assessing all those little intangibles. Really, just make sure you're not losing out. And I still feel like there's areas we're losing out, but I feel like those will come in time. Right now, what's most important for me is just creating like quality content.
Yeah, and I think once you've got those sort of things in place, especially as an artist, I think that's when you can go back to creativity, because I think if you're constantly in that state where you're worrying about whether you're making enough money, then you stop you stop being creative. You can't find things to be inspired by because you're too panicking about having to make money, which is, again, a problem that a lot of beginners face when they're starting out.
Yeah. I agree. I agree, man. I always say to people, like, I was so fortunate. Obviously, I had shitty jobs, but I was so fortunate at the time that I had something else that was supplementing my income. Because if it was just me trying to make art to make money at the time, I would have made so many like sacrifices and concessions in order to make money off the art. And I think that's a really, like you said, it's a really bad place to be in. And I've been in that place. Like sometimes, like maybe 2 months out of every year, I go into business mode where I oversee the business and try to think of different stuffs. And I enjoy business as a creative endeavor, like, you know, like how to make money out of nothing. I like that aspect. But when you stay in that area too long as a creative, it's not the most fulfilling.
And why do you think creatives kind of, because I'm in the creative industries myself, and one of the things that I harp on about is treating your art as a business. And I kind of feel like there's a bit of resistance from the people creating the art to even think that way. Why do you think there is that sort of resistance?
I think it's a lot of pressure, first of all, from society, because there's a typical stigma that, oh, if you're an artist and you make money, what's it called? Oh, you're selling out. You know, I mean, you can see like rock bands who are worth millions, but they pretend like they're dressed like they're still making music in their basements. You know what I mean? Because there's this stigma attached to making money, and automatically, even you'll be surprised, the perception of your audience is that, I mean, I don't live in the same place I did when I started shooting my videos. And I mean, it's only when I started showing my new place in my videos did I ever, for the first time in my life, get a comment saying, oh, Suli sold out. And I'm like, I'm saying the same thing, but just the perception that people feel like, okay, I'm living in a different place. People's perceptions that, no, the money must be changing its content. You know what I mean? So there's that aspect. And I feel like another reluctance is that you're putting an additional pressure on yourself, because now you have another criteria to assess your success by, you know what I mean? And as an artist, it's kind of like, that's an additional pressure. Imagine like being signed to a record label. It's kind of like you make something. I remember I used to listen to Lupe Fiasco, and one of his biggest things was, I feel like he made an amazing album. He made a classic album, but he was like, his label said, because it didn't sell as much as Taylor Swift, it's not good enough. You know, so I feel like when you do start to view your art as a business, there's another criteria you have to assess your art by. And for a lot of artists, that's daunting and it's intimidating, because you're like, oh shit, it's not just about it being good anymore. It has to sell. And if it doesn't sell, it means it's not good. You know, you have to have a lot of confidence in your ability, which I find artists are very sensitive people in general. You have to have a lot of confidence in your ability to put it on that pedestal and be like, okay, I'm cool with it, with balancing how much it sells with how much it makes. But like, you know, so I feel like that's why a lot of artists are really reluctant. Just those two pressures make such a big difference, I think, in how you create and how you move. And you can always say, I mean, when you don't make money with it, no matter how bad your art is, you can always say, I'll do it for myself, I'll do it for the love. But once you're trying to make money with it and it's not making money and it's terrible, then it's kind of like you don't have an excuse anymore.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of like a metric that people kind of tend to go to. Is it making money? And then that's it. Okay, that's a success if it is. Yeah. Yeah,
and I feel like it's messed up a lot of the art industries, that mentality. But it is the common consensus, you know. Like I hear some music which I think is trash, but because it's making money, the artists, they get acceptance and they get given a blight, you know. And I feel like so people are so wary of that, and they're like, you know, it's hard.
Me and Wayne talk a lot about technology on this podcast, and I know you're a big fan of technology and where it's heading in the future. Where do you think like the biggest opportunity there is out there for artists and technology? Like, is there something you see coming? Do you see that it's going to help artists? Well, I can already see it is, but I'd love to know where you think it's going to take it. I
think more so in the areas of promotion and distribution, but also currently, I mean, I don't do a lot of crowdfunding and crowdsource for fun, getting money from your crowdsourcing, like Patreon and like Kickstarter and stuff like that. I think those are very, very viable means. I don't do it myself personally because I feel like maybe because I feel like I'm British and being raised in England, you're kind of so like conservative about talking about money. I don't know, but I'm just, you know, I'm just not as like inclined to those platforms. But I think that's a very good way for artists to make a lot of money, like sourcing money from your audience. And I think it puts a lot of, it's going to be, it's really going to break down the boundaries between artists trying to get everyone to accept them and just getting people that like them to accept them and creating art the way they want. So I think that's going to be huge. And I think those are going to be great tools for artists. And I think in the space of promotion and distribution, I think the opportunities are like limitless, and I think it's just going to be infinite. I just think the fact that it's so accessible for artists to distribute their music on like all these platforms, and when you can do it on your phone, all that stuff, people don't acknowledge how much of a difference maker it is. That's why you have independent artists charting on the scale that they do right now. And I think as social media expands as well, they're just going to make more and more avenues to be explored via that way. So. I mean, it's a healthy time to be growing up as an artist. Very, very, very healthy. I mean, people worry about CD sales and that stuff, but it's like, those are kind of like the old ways to make money. Now there's ways to connect to your audience real time, in real life, and then there's just so many more opportunities.
Definitely. I was reading a book recently, and there was this quote. It was saying like what they believe leadership is. And they sort of said it as moral authority. And then when I was coming to interview you, I was thinking that a lot of what you do, that makes you a leader in the sense that I feel that a lot of the content you put out is that moral authority. And I'd just love to know like how you go about finding this kind of content, because I know your recent video, like I wish I had said something, is so powerful and so timely. And I was just thinking like, where does this inspiration come from, and how do you know? It seems to like hit at the right moment, some of your art.
I tried to live in the moment, and I think before the end of last year, I wasn't living in the moment so much. So like it was hard for me to create a lot of stuff. But I think there's a very big importance. Like I don't like people saying I'm a leader or I don't really. I'm not trying to be a leader, if any sense. If people view it that way, then I'm totally cool with it. You know what I mean? But I feel like it's very important to be aware of your environment. And I think my best content and most relevant content has always been when I'm aware of my environment. It's not been when I'm like flying from country to country and like staying in hotels and all that kind of stuff. Like it's more like when you're aware of what's going on around you. Like and I take it back on a simple scale to when I was in Nike Town, like I was explaining to you. Everything I was talking about was so relevant because it was so relevant to my peers who were around me, and I was so tuned into their environment. And I think that's what made the subjects so poignant. And I think that's what makes them so poignant, because with something like Wish I Had Said Something, that's what's going on around me, I mean, that's what I'm feeling. And I think if you can tune into your environment, you always find a way to say something that resonates. I think all over the world, we share the same stories, just in different contexts. And if you say something that resonates, like you said with Skepta, I feel like with grime music, it tells a very authentic story of London City. Mm-hmm. And you may not be from London, but you can resonate with that understanding in your own environment. And I think that's where it comes from, just being aware of the environment and knowing what's going on, and tapping into that.
Definitely. So we're going to obviously start wrapping things up soon. And I know you've had this book series that you've been doing. You obviously spoke about The Alchemist, and you have videos about books that saved my life. And me and Wayne have been doing a few like book giveaways recently. And I was just wondering, like, if Suli Breaks could upload, say, maybe 3 to 5 books into every young person's head, or get them to read those 5 books, what would those books be?
Oh, man, like I said, it has to be The Alchemist. The Alchemist, definitely. The thing is, I acknowledge The Alchemist as not the best book ever written. I just know the impact it's had on my life. And I feel like if you read it at a certain time, it will really have that same impact. So it'd be The Alchemist. I'll definitely Rich Dad, Poor Dad, just because I like the way it broke down in layman terms, the way I could understand
wealth generation.
yeah, that's it. I mean, whatever he calls it, I understand it. Then it's a toss-up between the 48 Laws of Power or the 50th Law. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's a toss-up between those two, because I really like Robert Greene, and I think the 48 Laws of Power, I think it's more a perceptive read in the sense that, I don't know, I think it's just a very well-written book. There's an essence of history and an essence of like future. I just think it's a good assessment of human nature. I really, really like it. Mm-hmm. And it makes you more perceptive. Huh?
Yeah. What I love about 48 Laws of Power is you can kind of read it through many different lenses. I shared it with somebody once and they were like, God, this is a really dangerous, manipulative book. And I was like, it is if you look at it that way, but if you look at it as an empowering book and one that you can understand the way people work, then it becomes life-changing.
Exactly, and I think that's what it is. I think that's what it did for me. The way people work, I think it reaffirmed the idea of the like. There's deliberate patterns in life, and there's deliberate actions you can take to create desired effects. So I think that was why that was so pivotal for me. So I think it'd have to be a Robert Greene in there. What would the fourth book? What was one of my favorite books? It'd have to be. I was going to say the manuscript found in Accra because I just think that's a beautiful book, but not so much that book. I think it'd have to be like a kind of like a book that's kind of like, you know, like a fantasy kind of like books I enjoy reading. So it'd have to be. It wouldn't be Harry Potter. It'd probably be. No, it definitely wouldn't be Harry Potter. There's a book I read recently. There's a book I read recently that I'm in love with, but that's definitely not what I'm going to recommend. I'm proper in love. I think it would be. Maybe The Colour Purple. I really like The Colour Purple. I think it's a well-written book and it's very like emotional and, you know, and written by Maya Angelou. I really like The Colour Purple. And the last book would be, I read The Art of War as well. The Art of War is interesting, but it's very thick. I'd say The Colour Purple. Stick to The Colour Purple. You know, you have to have some creativity in there. And the last book would be The Zombie Survival Guide, definitely.
So good mix. I like that.
I'm obsessed with like zombie, like I don't even know what it's called, zombie law or whatever, but like The Walking Dead and all that kind of shit. I really like reading stuff like that. It's very, very funny. But definitely, if we're going to be like books that will change your life, I definitely add the manuscript found in Accra, 48 Laws of Power, The Alchemist, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then Malcolm Gladwell. Would I put Outliers? You know, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah, I'm definitely set on those four. I'm definitely set on, mainly those three I'm definitely set on, but those four. And I recently bought Alan Sugar's book for someone I know, and I'm waiting for them to read that. So I'll read that back. And I recently I've got two biographies that I want to read, which is Muhammad Ali and Barack Obama. So I'll look at those. The biography I really enjoyed actually is the one about Malcolm X's biography, which I'd recommend. That's what I'd recommend instead of Colour Purple, because I think
this book bundle's getting bigger and bigger.
Oh yeah, shit! I'm just going. Yeah, but for a testament to Malcolm X's biography, I like the fact that he's an example of someone who's gone through every area of life. Like they've gone from being extreme to being like a political leader to being like a drug dealer, gangster. It's a very, very perceptive book on like where you can come from does not dictate where you end up at all.
Okay.
We also have two other questions which we ask every guest, and It would be remiss of us not to ask you, Sully. So the two questions are, obviously the show is called Powerful Nonsense. So the two questions are, what's the most powerful piece of advice you've ever been given? And the other question is, what's the biggest load of nonsense you've ever heard?
Oh, cool. The most powerful piece of advice I've ever been given is probably my dad. My dad was into philosophy, and he always gave me like two quotes in it. He was like, he had this quote which he made me memorize. I don't know why, so it's just always kind of stuck with me. And it goes something like, the height which great men attained and kept was not reached in sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, toiled through the night. So that's kind of like talking about perseverance, you know, and just keep on going. And then in the same vein of that one, he told me another quote about which I don't know how I read is what's the guy who created the lever? I think it's Archimedes, or I can't remember.
Yeah, I think Archimedes sounds about right.
Yeah, and it was something about, he said, give me a lever and a place to stand and I'd move the world. And I've always liked that. So I've always that made my own version of it, which was like, give me a microphone, a place to stand, I'd move the world. So those are probably the two quotes that I always that's probably the best advice about persevering and just empowering. The other one was kind of just empowering.
Strong answers.
And the biggest piece of nonsense I've ever heard is it's like it's like an argument. So I'm just trying to think what would encapsulate it into like a sentence, you know. It goes back to what you were saying about you know, the whole argument that there's no one way to do something. You know, I'm trying to think of a sentence that encapsulates that. Mm-hmm. Maybe the biggest piece of nonsense is like I heard was, this is how you do it, because it's not how you do it. There's no way how to do it, you know. Mm-hmm. There's so many different ways to do it. So I guess that would be the biggest piece of nonsense that I can testify to the society, that there's only one right way to do something.
Definitely.
Really good. Really
I think
good.
that's it. And obviously the internet is just opening up all those different channels. We're seeing so many different people do things in their own ways. And I think you're a prime example of that. It's been a massive pleasure to have you on. I've been super excited. I've been excited for so long. Even this morning I woke up and I was already in my head having questions that I was like, oh, what should I ask? And I was getting a bit nervous. But yeah, it's been such a pleasure to actually talk to you. And I really can't wait to come to your next show as well. And
please do, man. I'm going to sign up to you guys' podcast. I really enjoyed this.
Oh, wicked.
Thanks,
We'd love to have you back on again at some points. We've got like so many more notes, but obviously we want to be respectful of your time. But it's been a pleasure, really, honestly.
Yeah, that's totally cool. And you guys, how is your podcast on the you know, the iPhone? You can
yeah, it's on there. Yeah,
yeah. If you go into on the podcast,
Yeah.
iTunes, Powerful Nonsense, it'll pop up.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that because I just finished Serial and I'm just looking for a new one to listen to.
Yeah, and we really need like.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't mind you putting us in the same league as Serial. I'd be pretty happy.
Well, now that he's been on, obviously.
obviously, yeah.
And we are desperate for reviews, so you know, if you've got a bit of spare time on your hands,
Definitely, man. I'll do that now. Even I'm subscribing as we speak.
Awesome, good stuff, man. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a wicked week next week. And obviously, is there anything you'd like our audience to do for you, or how can we keep in contact with you, or find out when your shows are coming up?
I mean, yeah, all of it's just via like my social media outlets, you know, Suli Breaks, SuliBreaks. And outside for that, man, I just hope to see you guys at the show, you know, and you know, if you just closer to the time, I'll get Linda to hit you guys up, definitely, man. Maybe we could talk after that as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And just to say a massive thanks to Linda for sorting this out as well.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, no problem, man. No problem. I was literally telling my friend I'd meet him, and then she was like, you know, you have to be at a podcast right now. So I was like, oh shit.
Well, thank you so much anyway.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, man. Really, really a pleasure.
There we are. Suli Breaks Part 2.
Your full dose has been delivered.
That whole tub of ice cream has been eaten in 2 sittings.
Suli is not an ice cream.
Sorry, Suli, you're not. Maybe we should have the Suli Breaks ice cream parlour.
Maybe.
With Suli Breaks as the face of the.
What flavour would it be?
Ooh, no, that's a tough one.
Let us know.
Let us know, Suli, if you're listening, which I'm sure you are. Let us know if you were a flavour ice cream. What flavour ice cream would you be? Awesome. This has been a great interview. I've absolutely loved it.
One of my favourite.
One of my favourite, without a doubt. And we'd love to know what you thought of the episode as well. So hit us up on email, wayne@powerfulnonsense.com, or hit Jem up on jem@powerfulnonsense.com, or even speak to us on Twitter and share it and
tweet out quotes, all those quotes that you've got from the episode, or
we think this episode has got so much value for everyone. So please share and share away. And also, one of the best ways you can tell us what you think is leave a review on iTunes. Just hit us up. 5 stars or more would be greatly appreciated.
Yep.
So thanks very much for listening, guys. Thanks so much to Suli Breaks for coming on the podcast. It's been great to have him on.
I was just going to say, Wayne, how long is the book comp going on for, just so that we can let people know? Because
we will close the competition a week from today, I think. So that will be February 19th. It will close.
Cool. And that is powerfulnonsense.com/book to enter.
Yeah. Great. So hop over there, enter your email address. You'll be entered. Share the competition. You'll boost your chances of winning. And until next time, stay classy.
See you later.